So we are in week 4, and going back to class plan, let's see, updated on September 18. And what I changed, it's just a reminder, already talked about it. I explicitly added list today, and I assume that you already watched video with some list and make it beautiful. And so I asked you to look through, because in your assignment I want you to change, customize appearance. And the example that they use is using lists. So in order to understand that example, just get some familiarity with lists. Today I will use it in my example, and topic is navigation in apps. I will have example with navigation without lists and navigation with lists. And next time I will start talking about local databases, and your assignment 2 will contain definitely navigation and most likely databases as well. Because we need to make it compact in order to fit cloud stuff. Speaking about examples from Google, so in week 4, I posted a link to navigation in Jetpack Compose. These are theoretical part from the course I'm referring to. And they have example cupcake. It has multiple screens, and view model is sharing data between different screens. It has radio button inputs, I believe, on all screens, and eventually it collects data from all screens into view model. And on the last page, there is a button like send order, so it was cupcake order. And definitely it is a really fake situation, because this way you can order cupcakes only one kind. There is no way to order 2 different cupcakes. So it is just a demo. It's not real life application. And in the end, it is showing how to open another app using intent. So there is a button in the end, open email to send the order, presumably by email. So we will open it to see that specific part, how to open another app. Example, it is just tedious. It's not specifically great in any sense. Where it is different from my example and all other examples from Google. When they switch pages, they do not switch toolbar at the top, they switch content, but they update toolbar in this example. So they show how to update toolbar, how to trigger update of toolbar when we do navigation. Perhaps it was just an example to show it's possible, but in all other examples, they just switch pages with toolbar itself. So they don't have to update it, they just use the same toolbar with different parameters, and since it's with different parameters, it is reloaded. So this is specific of the example. They do have it part of lab. So they have navigate between Compose as a lab, but it is quite long. So I'll look through. If you care, watch this video. Definitely there is other videos in it. I will try to explain what is there today. Using my examples that are simpler, shorter than the cupcake example. And I have example of navigation from list to details. And this is quite common in apps. When we have a list of emails, we click on it, it shows email content. They do not cover it here. They cover it in a further example using database. So this is without navigation from list to details. All their screens just do not have lists. So just go from one state to another state. The example for using local database is quite, I would say, long. And also it is fake because it is imitation of some, say, this inventory, imitation of some app that is doing inventory, but there is no way to get data out of this app. And it stays on device local data. Nobody will do that in real life scenario because who would need inventory on one mobile device and there's no way to get it out. It should be somewhere on a server, right? Not on local database on the device. So in this case, the database app is a little fake. But it's not difficult to make an app that is not such fake. For example, instead of doing inventory, to-do list, for example. To-do list or shopping list is quite a reasonable idea if it is just local data on your app. So you make the shopping list, you go to shop, and you take it with you. Nobody else cares about your shopping list. But inventory is different. In this case, some of the examples are slightly fake. So they are demos. They are not really a real-life scenario. Before we go there, because it is quite long, let's look at a shorter example that has only 2 pages, and it's already explained without navigation system. So we don't have to explain GUI for it, because GUI is the same. I need to explain only how navigation is set it up. It is paper, rock, scissors. So going back to a rock, paper, scissors example. Going back to week 4, our first example for today is already explained without navigation system with imitation of navigation system by flags. Speaking about navigation, navigation without navigation system by using some kind of flags, state variables that use as a flag which screen to show. It's not completely dumb, especially if you want to do something fancy. So going back to their course, if we go to navigation architecture, it is one step up from navigation. We will see that they have a next activity is adapt for different screen sizes. And that example does have navigation, but without navigation system. So they have a system of flags that they flip to show different screens. Perhaps it is simpler in many examples, so they decided that, okay, let's show it this way. So it was my motivation to do it navigation 2 ways in rock, paper, scissors, one with flags and one with actual navigation. Because the example for navigation for different screen sizes do not even use navigation system. Perhaps they decided this is too complicated, so let's do simpler. So this was my motivation to have rock, paper, scissors in 2 ways. All right, so this, going back. And also a reminder that assignment 1 is due on this Saturday. You will have only 1 lesson left to ask questions, because if something goes wrong, except today and Thursday, I assume that you already started, because it is first assignment using Android. Many things can potentially go wrong. So you really, if you didn't start assignment 1, you really need to start it tonight, okay? Because tonight you will just start it, and maybe tomorrow you do progress on it, and if something goes wrong, you can ask a question on Thursday morning. Okay. So you really need to start assignment 1. Assignment 2 will be far more complicated because it's almost middle of the course already, assignment 2. So if you completely puzzled about assignment 1, it's a warning sign you delayed studying. You need to study more organized, in a more organized way. So paper, rock, scissors. We already cloned it last time, so let's open it. Or just clone it again if you didn't clone. Rock, paper, scissors. Here it is. I will not re-explain it because it is already explained in video recorded. So it is just a very brief reminder. I explained branch, call it no navigation. There is navigation, but there is no navigation system in it. How it looked like, I have app root screen inserted into a theme, and app root screen shows different things depending on data field destination in UI state. Destination is kind of where you are. Right? So my UI state class contains enumeration type destination. By default, it is play screen, and the other screen, it's only two, it's a result. So a destination is an enumeration type that I defined here. It's the play and result. So in my app root screen, I'm getting UI state from view model, and UI state is stored in state flow in view model. Here it is. State flow, and just because it is state flow, it cannot update trigger of the screen. It cannot trigger the screen for update, so it needs to be converted to state because state flow is pure Kotlin. It's not related to GUI. So it is initialized to default whatever is there. You already saw default. It is a play screen and some other things. Right? Where is this initialization? It is here. See, I call it constructor of UI state, and it is immutable state flow. This is reference to the same variable, but from not mutable. Right? So since it's not mutable, it's GUI cannot update it directly. And I have updates of the state by copying state and calling update. So this is current state, and what is inside of this Lambda function is new state created by calling these logic functions. I explained this in the previous lesson, spent enough time explaining, so if you forgot, watch video. Today I explain navigation system where view model will be the same, except my state is not storing destination, because destination will be stored in navigation system itself. So there's no need to have a flag which is destination. So let's switch branch to main. So I do have local main. Check out and I need to synchronize it by clicking elephant button because this branch is using additional library related to navigation system. So otherwise it will not work. So synchronizing. Which additional library I added? It is navigation-compose. How did I do it? The same way as before, new project structure. And in the project structure, I went to dependencies, click at APP, added dependency and library, and typed navigation -compose, did search, it found it. I selected stable version, edit, and this is how I got it. So this code has additional dependency. So let's see it. Mentioned in lib versions, navigation compose dependency. This Android X navigation compose, this part. It is not part of a default Android project. You have to add library in order to use navigation compose dependency. So what is next? let's see what is inside of app root. In app root, now I don't have a switch of a state because my state doesn't have destination in it. So let's open state. As before, it has a user choice, computer choice, and game result, but it doesn't have a flag where we are in the navigation system. Because when we use navigation system, composed navigation system, destination is stored in the system itself. So when you do navigate, it will flip destination. So navigation system has own state stored in navigation. So let's go to app root screen and see how it starts. It starts the same way. We got state from view model. So we have a state. And it is by, see, so we have delegation to state object from state variable. This is just regular class variable. And this will be object that will trigger update of the screen. It will be state that contains game UI state, data class, data object. Next, we got nav controller. Why it's remember? First of all, it's function call rate. And remember because it needs to be remembered when we refresh the screen, right? Because it contains state of navigation system inside. Remember that compose functions, including app root screen, are called repeatedly when system needs to refresh the screen. So when system is refreshing screen, it shouldn't flip to another page, essentially. So this is why nav controller has to be remembered. There's no other way. Okay? Because it is storing state of the navigation system, like current page, for example, which page to show. And although this just say remember nav controller, it appears like it's not just remember, it's also remember savable, because page is not flipped when we rotate the screen. So it's not just remember it for refreshing of the screen, it's also remember it during rotation of the screen. So like a current destination will be preserved during rotation. So technically it's remember savable, but they call it remember nav controller. So this is nav controller. What is nav host? Nav host is composable function, and it takes multiple parameters, but I'm using 3. These 2 and lambda function that is passed as last parameter, this one. First parameter is nav controller in control of this navigation host. What is navigation host? It's part of this. It is composable functions, so it is part of the screen, like any other composable function. It's a part of the screen. But navigation host, it's a part of the screen to be replaced with different composables using navigation system. So it's like a window to insert pages, essentially. This is nav controller that is in charge of the navigation for this part of the screen, nav host, navigation host, and this is start destination, so it is what to show first. And you see that destination in this case is a string. So simple examples from Google use strings as labels for destinations. If we will open examples, even first examples from Google, they do not type strings directly like I did. They just define constant that is storing string. It's better. Why it's better? Because when we type string, we can mistype, right? I type it play here and play here. Imagine it's longer word and I miss it a letter. If I mistype it here, this will not match, right? So instead of typing strings directly, it's probably better idea is to define constants and refer to the constants so we cannot mistype it. And if you mistype constant name, compiler will just tell it there's no such thing, right? So for larger project, definitely using some constants or classes, even storing constants, it's a better choice. In this example, I didn't define constants. I'm referring to strings explicitly just to show what is there. So I don't have to jump between definitions of constant. Okay? So bottom line, in simplest cases, destinations are defined as a string. Is there other choices? Yes, there are other choices. Example that already discussed but never shown, didn't show, it is example that is using cloud to store to-do list. It is part of the course that is first time is extendable part, like, because it requires at least 3 weeks to explain how this beast works. That example is using different approach for destination. It's using serializable objects. So there are fancier way of dealing with it, but in simplest choices, it is string and string works. So this is default. Composable, route, and we're here. Right? Show play screen. So I'm calling play screen function. But here's a catch. Because navigation controller, it's a GUI, right? It's a GUI, part of the GUI, because it is in charge of replacing screens. And in order to replace screen, I need to call some GUI function. So when I click on something, I need to do 2 things now. Perhaps updating view model and flip screen. Updating view model is not, technically view model is part of the GUI, but it should not refer to GUI elements directly because view models survive rotations, but GUI elements do not. So if you try to keep reference to GUI elements inside of GUI, it could be reference to something that's already dead. Okay? And there are new things created after rotation. So there is a trick. If we need to do navigation and something else, we may need to do two updates. Updates in view model and doing navigation. So on play, this is a lambda function, call it when we click play button. So I need to update state of view model, because now I click at play, it needs to generate random choice for computer, decide who is the winner. It is inside of view model, right? And I need to go to result page, right? This is pure GUI, this is not. So when we use navigation, we'll have to deal with this issue now. That we may need to update GUI this way, right? To next page, navigate something, and view, update business logic. So I cannot call just on play like it was before, because view model contained a destination flag that was updated, and screen was triggered due to update of that flag. Flag is no longer inside of view model, so there's nothing to trigger there. Triggering is this one, nav controller navigate to route result. So when I click on play button, this is going on, view model update, nav controller navigate. To result, and here is result, and here is result screen. Right? Help is the same logic. And on the result screen, I have similar issue, all right? But it's not navigate, it is pop back stack. What is the difference? I can call navigate to play, and it will work. But it will be some side effect. Navigation system comes with history. We already saw it last time when it was a demo, navigation with the flag using flag variable, and navigation using navigation. what was the difference? When we press back button on the device itself, not back button of the app. If we don't use navigation system and we do not write extra code that imitates it, back button will take us outside of app. So in the other version, not this back button, this is inside of the app. I mean this one. Okay? This back button is taking us to previous screen. What this does, explicitly, it is doing this, pop back stack. So navigation stack, it is saved states inside of navigation system. So this one takes you to previous state. If I use navigation, it will create new one. So instead of going to previous state, it will create third state on the stack. So if we do navigate, 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 we will add states to the stack. Right? Maybe it's a good idea. It really depends on your situation. It really depends on the logic of your app, what you want. But bottom line, navigate will save state on this navigation stack. So this button will be truly like going to previous state. But if you do pop back stack, it will just remove current and go to previous one. It will not create third entry in the navigation stack. So this is the difference. Navigate here will create third entry on the stack, navigation stack. Pop will go to previous one. And again, it really depends on the logic of your app. Either of the choices could be valid depending on what you do. Especially if you preserve data somehow, yes. But this program is not preserving data. Because data is just one object stored in view model. If we create a stack of previous states, it's not really previous state. It's just previous it is just entries on the stack. It will not be previous user choice. It will be still current user choice because we still have the same data. So adding navigation stack, growing navigation stack, really makes sense if we preserve data at the same time. But not in this program, because this program is not saving older data, right? So there is no way to see what was choice 3 games ago, because it is just one flag variable in the program. Okay? It's not any kind of history of the database, or history inside of the database. So in this particular program logic, there's no logical need to grow stack of previous states, because stack will grow, but states will be the same in the growing stack, because our state is just one object. And when we go to previous game, it will still show current game, not previous game, okay? Because we're not saving games in any sense. I hope it's clear, right? So there is a difference between popping navigation stack and just navigate, because navigate is adding state, but pop will remove current state and go to previous one. So this is the difference. This is also what I have here. This is the same behavior here. This will call nav controller pop. Where do I have it? Play. In navigation screen, I have on replay this one, and let's see result screen. Play result. result screen. And you see, on navigation back in top bar, it is what I passed here. It is the same on replay. That is on this button. And the same on this button. Okay. So on icon, this one, floating icon, string resource, this is arrow back, and on click, this is on replay. So this is floating action button. And this is top bar, and this is column that contains button. Where is the button? Here it is. That also refers to on replay. So on replay, it is in 3 places: here, here, and here. Lambda functions that I pass it to on replay. Okay. And speaking about this part, this is the same as this one. It is on play. So paper. Okay. So this is extremely simple navigation approach when we have only 2 screens, right? And we use string to navigate it, and there is no data inside of a string. It can go complicated. It can go complicated because potentially we can have pages inside of the pages. We can have several pages. We have pages in one piece of the screen, pages in other piece of the screen. So potentially it can be complicated. But currently it is just simply how to fall. Okay. Questions? Next. Let's look at the example that contains list. In this case, there is a trick because we need to pass data during navigation. Because we need to, of course, we can pass data in view model, right? This is what happens here. But we need to pass data, different kind of data. Pass data to specific screen. Right? So address will contain data. So every item on the list has details with own address, essentially, because that part of the address is replaceable. So like email ID, for example. So let's look at that example. And that it has a list in it. And it is great. It is huge simplification to real-life scenario because it imitates getting data from elsewhere, but I removed all complexity related to getting data from elsewhere, just to explain navigation and lists together. So it is, again, this is huge simplification, and in the next week we will see that it is more interesting in real-life scenario. Okay? When data is coming from somewhere, it is a local database or from web, we have to deal with delays of getting data, delays of updating data. And when we deal with it, programming becomes more interesting because we will have to write concurrent code. Concurrent code, that means we have tasks running at the same time, essentially. And when we write tasks running at the same time, it's interesting, but it's great power, but great responsibility. Okay, because a great responsibility because we can mess it up, because potentially we have the tasks running at the same time, so we can corrupt variables. Technically, this code that we already have is already concurrent. But compiler did great job of hiding this concurrency from us. Our previous GUI that we had, object-oriented GUI, used only one thread and to update GUI, and it wasn't concurrent. So it could use only one one core of processor to update GUI of your app. So it was kind of inefficiency, and it was one of the motivations for Google to switch from object-oriented GUI to composable functions, because apps using composable functions use several cores to update the screen, essentially. Even we don't need to write multi-core code for it. It is done under the hood by the Android system. So composable functions are run concurrently. So under the hood, it is parallel code. And compiler doing great job to hide that it is parallel from us. So we don't have to deal with it explicitly. Okay. And older object-oriented code for GUI could use only one core of the processor, but these potentially can use multiple cores at the same time to update the screen. So this is a huge difference between older GUI and new GUI in Android. That GUI is concurrent code. Right? So, but when you retrieve data or update data, store it elsewhere, like you read the file or read database, which is under the hood is still file, right? Because local database on the GUI, so on Android is still reading the file. It's not a server. So there is no local server for database on Android. It's still reading the file, and libraries that we use provide SQL kind of interface to read and update these files. So let's clone example, pet data. That pet, I will close this one. Pet data. I made multiple versions of it, but I decided that I will create fresh repository with name fall 2025 and keep growing it like I did for the examples. There are versions of it with, that use actual data server. There is one version that gets data for cPanels, from cPanels. There is multiple ways. And we will look at this when I will keep adding those things. But now, main branch has hard-coded data similarly to a list in that unit that asked you to watch that explains themes. Right? If you watched that example, video, for example, you saw that they hard-coded array of objects just in the code. And they display this data directly from the code. The reason is that if it is stored in the code, there is no delay of reading files, or there's no delay of getting data from web or getting data from the repository. So code is a lot simpler. This is why they did it this way. So in this version, I'm explaining lists, navigation from list to details, from details to list back, without dealing with delays. And for this reason, I did the same. I created an array of objects, and I'm displaying data from that array of objects. Okay. So let's clone it. Clone repository, Command V, doing class. In class, clone. Currently, it has only one branch, trans project, only one branch, main, that has a navigation in it. I'm trying to imitate code organization from architecture guide, so I have data access layer implemented with repositories. But again, this repository is fake because they do not handle any kind of delay. So they don't have necessary paths for it. In the next week, we will have example with delays in it, and this will be far more interesting than plain stuff. Okay? So let's see what we have. We have extra folder assets. And these assets contains images. Why did they do it? First of all, how did they add it? Because by default, you don't have assets folder. I right-click it on APP and say new folder, and I selected assets. This is how I got it. What assets is for? Assets is for such things like extra images that you don't want to come from web, but you don't want to put them into drawables. It is kind of in between. If it is something that needs to be replaceable, definitely it should be somewhere on web server. So you replace it on web server, and all apps will use new one. If it is something that you want to use the same interface as for web, but maybe you don't want to replace it, or it is just debugging state like this one, intermediate version, it's probably reasonable to put it into assets. Another thing for assets, it is for example, data file. So I created assets folder. Advantage for this example of using assets that I don't have to change the way how I display image depending on if data is from web or from assets, because it is the same library, the same API call. So that was my rationale of using assets, because later image in the new version, in the next versions of the code, images will come from web, and I don't need to change my code. I will use the same libraries, the same API calls. So that was my motivation of using assets folder. Okay? To use the same libraries as for retrieving images from web. So this is how I created assets folder, right-click and copy-pasted images. So they are images of pets. So I'm trying to imitate what you had in that lab that I asked you to watch, except it's different images. In that lab, it was just only dogs. This is just different stuff. Data is hard-coded as an array, because if I put it as data file, it will be delay of reading the file. I cannot do it simpler, okay? It's a simple way, because I didn't explain it yet, all right? So it is not file, because otherwise it will be delay of reading the file. So here it is, data, local, fake data list. Here it is. So I have pets, pet. It has pet ID because I will have get item by ID. Why? Because I click on hamster, I need to show details about hamster. So my imitation of database should have an ID, a primary key, essentially. Okay. Next, name of the pet, what is the pet, cat, dog, canary, how old is it, he, she, whatever, pet, it, right? And image name. So I define it pet class, as you see here, in the domain, here it is pet. ID, for the purpose of database, potentially, right? Name, pet kind string, age, and image name as a string. So this is my fake data. I'm doing similarly to dog example from the lab at this moment, but I'm creating extra step repository, because if data is coming from database or from web, we do need this part. We do need to create layer of retrieving it. It's repository layer. So I created interface, get all pets, give me list of pet, and get pet by ID gives me either pet or null, so it is nullable. question mark means could be null as a result. Because technically, if we provide ID 100, there's no such pet, so it will give null. So this would work only if there is no data delay. So this is already simplification. But it has a similar idea. Get all and get by ID, at least. OK? So I need to implement it somehow. So I have fake data repository, override, get all pets. I have a return list of pets, which is hard-coded list. All right? This is just a constant. In a file is what you saw, fake data list local. Okay? Just constant. That contain list of pets. But what about by ID? Find. It is part of the slides that I drop it because, OK, it's easier just to show it directly. How find works? It's a method of a list. You provide lambda function that returns true or false. If true means take it out, essentially. It is one at a time, and it's also default parameter of this default parameter of lambda function. I've already discussed it. If we don't want to create a variable as a parameter, for example, pet, here. So equivalent would be like that. Pet ID is equal to that. Okay, so this will be equivalent. So if I don't want to repeat pet, I can use it instead of pet. Right? And if it goes through entire list and it's always false, it will return null. For this reason, this has to be nullable, because find can return null. Questions? So it is find by ID. So it's imitation of database, right? Except there is no delay. Next. I have two screens, pet details and pet list. Okay? When I click item on the list, it will show details. And as you see, that list has view model, and details has view model, and they're different. At the previous lesson, we discussed that we can have more than one view model in the program, and sometimes it makes lots of sense if you have different screens. Because details show details about specific pet, list shows everything. Right? So in this case, we have two different view models per screen. But since we are not using hill dependency injection, they will leave even when you go outside of a screen. So it is minor issue in terms of efficiency. In the next week, we will start use hill dependency injection with database, because it will be easier. And we will use hill view model. That will potentially disappear when we go to another screen. So we will resolve this issue. But currently, they will leave even if you go outside of a screen. So it's minor inefficiency. There is no other way. There is no way to do it unless we use hill dependency injection. To create view currently, with the current technology, there is no way to create view model per screen, like literally per screen, that did not disappear when you go out, unless we use hill dependency injection system. And just it is extra step of complexity. We will deal with it in the next week. Okay. Currently, we have two view models per screen, and we have two state objects per screen. State for details of the pet. It is just storing pet. Okay? So there is no update of the data. There is nothing, just UI state of a pet, just pet. Show data from specific pet. What is here? Just list of pets. It is a state. So again, simplification. If we retrieve data from web, state is more complicated. Why? Because it could be loading state. Before you go to get the data, it could be loading state, so it will show animation, loading, 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 right? It's also state. What if you don't get the data? You ask it server, but server is down, it was loading, 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 no data. Eventually you go to error state. So if data comes from web, you may potentially have 3 states: loading, success, and error. So again, this is simplification. Assumption that the data is already here, right? This is definitely simplification. Because in real life scenario, it is 3 states at least: loading, success, and error. And success is this, right? Remember that we had the example with roll it, not roll it, implemented with sealed interface. So approach is the same, to create sealed interface with 3 states in it. Again, this is simplification at this moment. So what happens in details view model? In the details view model, I need a repository to get the data. A repository may potentially have dependencies, and these dependencies need to go from parameters of view model here. In order to pass parameter to view model without dependency injection system, we will have to create view model factory. We don't have to deal with it right now because our creating repository does not need any parameters, just hard-coded data. So it is just fake data repository. Here is repository. Pet ID, because it is details, I need ID to get data from the repository. And there is a trick. Saved state handle is provided automatically to view model function, so we don't have to deal with it when we create view model. We just call view model without parameters. This is provided automatically, and it will contain ID from the address. So in this case, address line will contain ID. And it is key value storage. You can have multiple pieces in it, and they are marked with keys. You will see it, and this is a key, so you will get value. So this part is coming from address line. Every pet has own address in the program. Perhaps it is used for optimization. Perhaps it is just kind of hashing in the Android system. I don't know. But this is how it is coded. Every pet or every item has its own address. So it comes here. So when I create state, you see, pet detail state, I get pet from the repository. Pet by ID. Remember, this is nullable. So potentially, if it is real data on web, maybe this data does not exist. You click it on item on the list, but this item is already deleted by something else, like a shopping, and this product was bought between, it's only one available, it was bought between kind of thing. You click it on it and you see details. So potentially it should be could be either null or some error message, right? But again, not in this case. So it is, I'm assuming it's never null. This is why I use question mark, double exclamation mark. Double exclamation mark means conversion from nullable to not nullable. This will crash the code if it is null, right? With some exception. So the double exclamation mark, it's conversion from nullable to not nullable. And this is a path given to state, and state goes to mutable state. So this is initialization. This is how it's available. Okay? So what is not explained, how it gets ID from the address line. You will see that addresses will have ID in it. I didn't go to navigation yet. Okay? So let's see list view model. It is actually simpler because it is get all. You don't need to pass ID. And list of paths go to state. State goes to state flow, and here it is. All right. So let's see. Let's look at the navigation because it's more interesting. We have ID in the address line. AVP root screen. The same navigation host, nav controller, right? Path list, it is the first address. Okay. Then here it is. On item click, what do? Navigate to, and this is template. You see, string is constructed by inserting ID in it. Navigate to, and on item click, it's lambda function that will receive one parameter, which is ID of item that I clicked. Okay. And it is default parameter of navigations, default parameter of lambda function. So clicking on path list screen will involve nav control navigate path details /2, for example, or 3. It will be exact now. It is ID of the item that I clicked. Because I have a function called with ID as a parameter inside of my code, GUI code. So paths do have own addresses, this one. And you already saw how it is used in a view model to retrieve it. It is possible to retrieve it directly in this code, like here in Composable, but it is more complicated, and we use it if we don't use view model. It is, since we use view model most of the time, it makes sense just to ignore this fact that it can be done outside of view model. Just know that it exists or look up when it's necessary. This is a required parameter. We can have multiple required parameters because they position dependent. It is matched by location, and yeah, it is matched by location. So if it is omitted, it will break logic, right? If you have two, one of them omitted, you don't know which one is left, right? So this is required parameter. It is possible to create optional parameter. In this case, we use a logic similar to web. Okay, so this, see, this is required parameter. It's probably ID of my project. Or let's go here. This is definitely some required parameter for web. If you do not provide it at all, it will mess up navigation logic of this website because it is position dependent. This is definitely some data, right? Some data in the address line. So Android uses similar logic for navigation with required parameters just as a part of the address like that. So they must be provided, otherwise it just fails. Our web also has this. On web, it is called path variables. But in Android, navigation is called required parameter. Also, if we look carefully, sometimes we have a key value pairs. You see question mark, we have a key equal to value. See? And when we have more than one, they will be joined with ampersand. Key, question mark, key equal value, ampersand, key equal to value. In this case, they're not position dependent because they're key value pairs. In Android system, when we use these kind of parameters as key value pairs directly, it is called optional parameters. On web, it's called request parameters. It is request, it means whatever browser sent request to the server and this parameter of those requests. A given example does not have optional parameter like that. Some examples do, we will see. For simplicity, it has only one required. We can have more than one. As you saw on web, it's just different places, and they will be position dependent. Okay. Now this is navigate to. When you navigate, you specify ID directly, but when you specify composable, you define it as key location. Right? So there is nothing inserted. This is definition of, it's a pattern essentially. It's a pattern for specific destination. So it's a pattern for specific destination, and this is a key. Use it in view model to retrieve the data, pet ID. Remember that savable state, get whatever, right? And when you do so, you need to define arguments. It's list of, in this case it's one, but potentially it's a list. And navigation argument, this is how it is called, so it should match. And type, integer, int type. All right? And after this, on navigation back, you can call nav up instead of pop stack. It will do the same, essentially. Navigate up. So let's run it and see how it works. And after this, we'll have a break and look into GUI. But let's see how it behaves. GUI is just using the data from view model state to display it. It's not editable. It is hard-coded everything. So let's see. Okay. So it shows list of animals with some data that you saw, hard-coded data. And this list is scrollable. Because it's lazy list, it comes with scrolling. Lazy list? Yeah, lazy list. It comes with scrolling. And when you click on item, it shows details, essentially. Potentially bigger image, but I didn't have bigger image, so it shows exactly the same, technically exactly the same data, just shown differently. Just to demonstrate navigation logic. See? And back button takes us back. Hamster. Okay. In this animation, what you see, this one, it comes by default with lazy list. We don't need to create this spring animation when we scroll it. So let's have a break, and after break, we will look in the GUI code of it. And most likely we'll have time to, so you work on your assignment, assignment 1. So after break, I will explain GUI, and then we will look at the example for, what's this called? Cupcake example from Google, and most likely you'll have half an hour left to work on your assignment and ask questions if something goes wrong, right? So let's have a break. So restarting after break. Before the break, we look at states and view model, but we didn't look at the GUI. And I forgot to mention a couple things, so let's cover that. This program is using library to load images, and I already mentioned that the same libraries with the same similar API is used to load data from web. It is called COIL library. And this library is not available by default in Android project. You have to add it as similar other libraries. So I tried to add this library with file and project structure, dependencies, app, add, library, search, and I typed coil, it didn't find. Oops, I don't know. So I copy-pasted it. So I copy-pasted it. First, I Google it, and since I already have this project, I've written for pre-illustration the course, I copy-pasted it. Sometimes this search just doesn't come up. So we have to Google and copy-paste to manually edit lib for TOM.ml file. So coil library didn't come up in a search, so I did it manually. In TOM.ml, I added coil library right here. Coil compose, and this is how it came up, information of the library name. This can be used as two separate pieces. You see, if it is group and name, it is this part, module, it is the same as group and name, separated by column. So you can add it as module or as two pieces. This is just constant defined at the top here. Version number of this library. So this was copy-pasted. It didn't come up with search. Sometimes it's just not perfect, doesn't come up. This I also copy-pasted, but I didn't check if it will come up or not. It is extra icons library. So it is using for some icons, I believe it is back button, something like that. This, I copy-pasted this part. In this one, I search it, and I search it for navigation dash compose. And it came up with project structure, a dependency library, and I type it navigation compose, it did come up, and it was added through that. I didn't check this one, and this did not come up, so I copy-pasted. So when you do assignments, like assignment 2 and later, if something does not come up in search, just open examples that use it in the class with the same features and copy-paste from that example. And definitely at TOM.ml, it is just mentioning aliases. It's not actually adding libraries to the project. In order to add those libraries to the project, I had to add them to Gradle KTS. So this is coil library, and this is alias how I created there. So it was a name coil-compose. This is how I call it this in alias. When I mention this library in Gradle file, it is lib dot, and dash is replaced with dot. So it is alias name. This is alias is how it was created for extended icons, and this was added automatically when I was adding dependency. So this library, this project has 3 additional pieces comparing to default project. Okay. So this is in terms of libraries. When we use databases, definitely it will be more. And when we start using databases, we will also use Hill dependency injection system. That will be even more. So when you do assignment of using databases and Hill dependency injection, you're absolutely welcome to try to do it search at dependency. Cool. But if it just doesn't come up, who knows, maybe it will happen, like coil library didn't come up. Just open example using in class, just copy-paste it carefully. Do not copy-paste with 2 examples at the same time, because it is using aliases. See, aliases are defined in TOM.ml file, because 2 different examples may have 2 different names for alias. So if you copy-paste this piece, but copy-paste alias from another project, this is not defined in the aliases that you copy-pasted. Names, how you mentioned library in Gradle file, must match aliases. So if you do copy-paste, do it from the same project. Okay, don't. Typical mistakes that students make, just the copy-paste random things, some from web, some from Google example, some from mine. But it really has to match, aliases do have to match library name, Gradle files. Sometimes we need to add stuff here at the top in terms of aliases to plugins. This is default one, so I didn't change these spaces. When we use HILT, dependency injection system, we will have to add plugins. Also to TomML file, it will be in plugins here, and it will be plugins at the top in two places. Place here and place here. These three are defaults. But with slightly more complicated example, you will have also additional plugins. One more thing, it's not related to library, it's already related to GUI. We discussed it that strings should come from string file, right? There is a file in resources called string, but not the strings that contain that actual data. Because if cat is, call it fluffy, it's not a resource file, obviously. This is what is wrong in the example from the lab that I wanted you to watch, because they coded string resources, they coded names of these pets and string resource. It doesn't make sense. Because this is data and string resource is available at compilation time. It's not replaceable. Okay, but what should go to string resource? This one definitely pet list. Name of the label of the pet, like cat, canary, it could be translated ahead of the time, right? Also, years old. Years old is really tricky. Please notice that if we scroll, we will realize that hamster is 1 year old, but rabbit is 2 years old. You see plural and single. Logically, years old, it's a string resource because it can be translated ahead of the time, right? But it is used differently for single and plural. When we use string resource, it shouldn't be language dependent because we don't know which one is used by user, what is user preferred language. Okay. So Android provides a standardized way for Android to deal with single and plurals on language dependent basis. So string resource can contain pure strings, like you refer to the string by label, and strings use it as a template in plurals and singles. So let's see how years old is defined. So I'm going to string resource, and I will see that it has all strings set on the screen, like bug, you see bug button, so it's labeled on the bug button. Pet list, you see it's here at the top, at pet list. Right? Pet data, it is name of the application. But this is very interesting. It's not called string, it's called plurals. These particular plurals, it is for default one, this presumably English, but you have variants of that all possibilities for all common languages. For example, in English, plurals for one is different from anything else. Because even if it is 0, it is still 0 years old. So it's still plural, right? So in English, one is different from anything else. In some languages, 1 and 2 is different. Okay? So there are combinations, there are other choices like 1, 2, many, a lot, whatever. Okay? So to cover all possibilities depending on the language. How do you call it? You call it with providing this number for the template. And it will apply the logic based on this number. Am I right? No, you provide two numbers. You provide two numbers, although you use just one. Here, one number is provided to make a selection, and other numbers are provided to insert into template. You can have more than one item in the template. So if you have only one item in the template, you provide two. If you have two, you provide three. One, it is to select template, others to fill template. Okay? So first is used for selection, others are to fill in. So let's open that. The place when we have year-old and years-old and see. Since I looked into that, so let's find it. So it is in pet. It is the same as here, so it doesn't have to be in the list. Because when I click on hamster, it is the same logic here, right? So it's probably easier to find in details. Pet details screen. Details body, here is details body, here's the pet. Right? So for the pet, I have column. In the column, I have row that contains pet kind and pet name. So row that contains pet kind and I call capitalize, because by default it is small, so capitalize first letter, and it needs locale to do it properly. Then text and display pet name. This is already capitalized. This is how I store it. In this case, his name is Max. Okay. So next, this is how to insert image. Just because I put it in assets, address is assets, blah, blah, blah. If it comes from web, it is just web address. So API is the same. So this library, coil, is using, this is function defined in coil library. We can download and display images directly from web into the app using this library. If you do so, you can, this would be web address. HTTP, blah, blah, blah. It also provides option to display something before image comes, like you provide animation, it will show loading. It has an option for default image to show. If nothing comes, you display some icons like arrow loading. So it is more than that. You have also options for loading image. If it's from web, it will be displayed while it's loading. And arrow placeholder before image, when image is not loaded because of error. But if it is local, I just don't assign this variable, so it's using default. And this is plurals. Okay? So this is what is inserted, and this is to select which of them. And as you see, it is repeated because I have one. Okay? If I have two places in the template, it will be three. One to select template and two others to insert it. Okay. So this is how to use plurals. It's not string resource, it's plural string resource. And this is ID. This is how it's a name in the string. Super useful. This way we don't have to deal with ifs to select. It's not just for years old, it's any kind of count is useful, like your score is 5 points or 1 point, right? So it is quite common. So let's see, since details are easier to explain, it's just one item. So let's look at that. So details body. And details body is inserted into pet details screen. This is what Google does a lot. View model is called, view model function is called as default parameter. Yeah, fine, it works. Sometimes you can do it as just calling the function here when you assign view model variable. It's just choice. So this is view model, a modifier, and this will be called when I go back here. So it is, this is given to toolbar. Right? You see it's nullable. By default, it's null. So if I do not provide anything, this will disappear. Okay? This is how I handle this inside of toolbar. If this lambda function is not provided, it will not show arrows. So there's no way to click it. Okay. So what they have here, let's look at that toolbar. Okay, and after this, go here. So if it's not provided, it will take null. And if navigation back is not equal null, I'm displaying icon button and have on click back, whatever. But otherwise, it's, you see it's if. So if it's not provided, this icon will not be on the screen. So it's, a button will not be clickable. So just a trick. So let's go back to details screen. State, remember for one, it is just a state, it's just pet inside. So this is view model UI state. Assign it here as state. There's no by because I just assign it to state variable. You see, state that contains pet details UI state. And pet will be just state dot value, that will be, no, it's not pet, it is what is inside of state, right? State dot value, it is what is stored in the state object. In this example, I decided not to use by, just to have it explicit. Okay. So this is actual state object. I wonder why the state. So let's open view model for that and see. Okay, pet details view model. Repository ID, mutable state. So it is not state flow, it's mutable state here. So this example is not state flow. This is why we don't need to convert. So it is simplification. It's not, it doesn't have state flow in it. If we have state flow, we need to convert it in order to trigger the screen. But state is triggering screen on its own. So it's a simplification, so it's not using state flow. So it is state, this is content of it, and details body is picking pet from the state. So details gets the pet. And this is the pet here, and this is already explained what is here. Okay. So this example doesn't use state flow, at least for details. Okay. Let's look inside of list. List. it is storing, in the state, it's storing list of pets. In view model, it's also mutable state. It is not mutable state flow. So it is the reason why there's no conversion. So it is more straightforward than state flow. So let's see pet list screen. Pet list screen in this case has scaffold that contains list body and top bar. So this is top bar, see top bar, and list body. And top bar doesn't, I didn't provide back button, so by default it is null, so it does not appear. So I reused the same top bar on both screens. Always if it is null, do not show this back. So pet top bar, and this is different titles, scroll behavior is passed, and list body. Please notice that this part is replaceable. It's part of the is the replaceable part of the screen. But in the example with these cupcakes, they keep top bar, but they replace what is below. This is different. When you replace everything, you don't need to update toolbar because you replaced it. But if you replace what is below, you need to trigger update what is outside of the window that you replace. So what they do in cupcakes, it is potentially more complicated task. They replace this part by navigation, and they also trigger update of outside of navigation. What happens outside of the navigation system? You will see that it is kind of complexity just to show it's possible, but no good reason for it. Okay. But then in this case, I just go simpler way, and all other examples from Google in the course that I'm referring to is doing that. Except that cupcake, okay? They probably decided to show it's possible to do. Okay, what happens in list body? List body takes list of pets. And what happens when I click on a pet? So this on item click, it is lambda function with parameter integer. And this integer is passed out, so we know where to navigate. So when we call this function on item click, we give it item ID. So this is how it knows what was clicked. When I click on cat, it will call this lambda function with ID of the cat as a parameter. So this is the logic of passing ID. It is on click, calling lambda function with ID here. So let's see what is inside of list body. We have a list. This is item click, right? Lazy column, okay? Why it's lazy? It's lazy because it is creating items as we scroll. It's not creating list ahead of the time. It probably creates couple items below and couple items up. This is why it's called lazy. It's not creating entire list to save memory. Okay. So it is creating items as we go. There is a similar way to deal with infinite lists, but we will take it separately because it is more complicated API for infinite lists. So it is lazy column. There is also lazy row to scroll horizontally, and there is also lazy, what is it called? Lazy grid. When you have items like not in one column or in a row, like on a grid. There is also lazy grid. We will have example with lazy grid. It's in future, it's with Mars photos. It's from Google. Okay. And how to display it? Items, this is iteratable. This is one out of the thing which is iteratable. So this is pet list, so we can iterate. it's one from them, and I call pet list item. It is this one, pet list item. Okay. This, and I pass what happens on a click. So I need to call this function with pet ID. Right? So this is how it knows ID of a pet on a click. Right? On click of pet list item, I'm calling lambda function, this one, with parameter pet ID. So this is the trick, essentially, how to navigate. All right. And this it is on click, but now there is no parameter because it's only one item. Because pet list item, it is only one. ID is given here. And what do I have here? Card, to have this nice frame around, row, to have this and this piece in a row, and there is a column here. So row contains image and column, and this column contains this column, contains row, this row, with pet kind, pet name, and this part, which is column, right? So it is repetition of what we had before, except it is arranged differently on the screen. It was this on top, this was in the middle, this was at the bottom, in details. So it is different layout, but the same content. One thing to be aware of. When you create lazy list, you need items. When you type items, sometimes it is importing function automatically, which is wrong one. This was the issue when I was teaching this course previously. When you type items, make sure that it imported specific one. Find where it is. This foundation lazy item, because there are some items from different library and it won't work. So if you type items, it doesn't work, make sure that this is from the right place, because there are also items from different packages and they behave differently. They exist for different purposes. Questions? So again, if item doesn't work, check what is importing. Sometimes it imports different items. I think this is reasonably covered. What is not covered, definitely delays, local databases. It is just limitation to explain GUI. And real-life scenario, if it only comes from web, of course, it has extras. Any questions? No? So let's open Google example. This is reasonably done. We will return to it with extra steps in complexity, having local database, getting this data from web server, something like that. So I close it for now. And let's clone Cupcake example directly from Google. Run it and see how they open extra up in the end, because it goes through three screens. After this, there is some submit order button, and it will open email or something like that to send order by email. So it's not really even realistic, but it shows how to open another app. Okay, so let's do that. Navigation with Jetpack Compose. Watch this video later. Test cupcakes, practice, what is next? Okay, let's open this, and this is Code Lab. All Code Labs from Google, they are kind of mechanical. Copy-paste this or type that, click OK, and it's done. So they don't actually ask you to think. But they have also practices, and practices do require you to think because it is something extra. Okay? So it's not direct instructions, it's some kind of creativity. So, good idea. okay, if you want to practice. So let's go to Code Lab. Okay, they want us to download code, add some stuff, and you see this is different kind of library files because they assume that we use older Android Studio. You can still open project like this, it will work, but structure of library files is different. Okay. Set up navigation host, set. Okay. So let's continue. What it is? Right navigation. So this is all they do tests. What they do, they define constants and wrap it in some data class, in enum classes. Other examples from Google don't even do that. So this is, in my opinion, is somewhat unnecessarily complicated case. So it's not just constants. This constants wrap it in enumeration classes. But the idea is that it's still using strings for destinations. It is just a fancy way to store those strings. Not much beyond that. They added some classes, and eventually, ta-dam, let's see the result. Okay. Do not download zip, just go and copy this path, and we will clone this with Android Studio. Copy. So I copied address of Git file on server. So let's open Android Studio and clone this cupcake. The same clone repository, and I paste this one, Command V. So it will create basic Android Kotlin compose training cupcake. All right? So let's clone and see. Trust project, it will work, although its structure is different, it is still compatible. I don't want to rewrite this one because it's a kind of mess anyway. But it definitely deserves to take a look at this. I'm waiting until it builds. Done. Do not run update because last time I figured out it may take a while. Right? Okay, just close this thing. So what do we have here? In data, they have data source, a list of flavors, and they also are just reference to string resources. So it is list of string resources. Flavors of cupcakes. Quantity options, 1, 6, or 12. So this is definitely not real-life scenario because according to that GUI, you can order only one flavor and only if it is 1, 6, or 12. So not real-life. Okay? But again, it's a demo. Order state. They have one view model shared between all screens. Also not a great idea, but again, this is a first navigation example from from that course. So it contains quantity, flavor, a date, when to pick it up, store it as a string, pickup order, price, also store it as a string, and list of the dates to pick up, so it will generate dates. Okay. Main activity, and in UI, in components, they have common UI, which is to format price label. Subtotal inserted in the string, and this is a value. So it's a string resource, and this is not plural because there is no alternatives for different numbers. Okay. We can have a template string. I already explained plural. Template string that they use, it is simpler. It is a string resource to insert value. There is no option to use different strings for different values. So it is also available, and it's nice, good to know. It's a string, use it as a template. If string is used as a template, you use number of parameters to match space holders inside of a string. In this case, it's only one, so it's one parameter. Also good to know, right? So it is in common. It is to use on different screens to display subtotal. Order view model, they use mutable state flow. This is even for simple examples, they already have a mutable state flow. This is why I encourage you to stick to it. And also, my additional examples, even with pet list, will have a state flow. It is first iteration, so I just overlooked it. I copy-pasted code from a year ago, and this year next year I will just change it to state flow. I missed it. It was stupid blind copy-paste. So what do they have here? State flow and to store order state. Right. And functions to update it. Set quantity, set flavor, and they call update to update state, store it in state flow. Similarly to my previous example, where did we use it? Rock, paper, scissors, right? In rock, paper, scissors, we call it update, and it was current state. And we created current state. We created new state by copying current state. So it is like in rock, paper, scissors logic. Set flavor, set date. And they use only one view model to share between screens, so they could accumulate data from every screen to update state of the order. Okay. And eventually calculate price to update it. All business logic are directly coded here. See? And pick up options, also last screen to update it. So let's browse what we have in main activity. In main activity, they call cupcake app. This is how Google use naming of them. So they have some function called app, like cupcake app. In my case, I call it root screen, app root screen. So I rename it this. When I write my code, I call it root screen. So it is not conflicting with another class called application. Because later we will have a class called, for example, cupcake application. So if they use dependency injection in their app, they will have two files. One is called cupcake app. The other one will be called cupcake application. Sounds nearly the same, right? But for two different, totally different purposes. Because cupcake app would be for the screen, but cupcake application will be for globals, global data for the app. So to avoid this kind of naming issue, for this screen I call root screen, app root screen. Just to know that there is no confusion what it is, okay? So cupcake app. So let's open that and see what is inside of it. Cupcake app. Where is that? Cupcake app, here it is. They create view model from the parameters. This is what Google loves to do. And here it is, view model. And this part, you see, bug stack entry by current bug stack entry as a state. So they create state object to trigger update of the screen from controller. So this is how they trigger update of the screen in order to replace content of the toolbar. Because their toolbar is in scaffold, but navigation host is inside of scaffold. So it is the first and last example when Google does it in their course. All the examples replace entire screen, but this example is replacing content of scaffold. And top bar is triggered because they create a variable specifically at the top, bug stack entry by, and this is a state, to trigger update of the screen for the navigation. Yeah, good to know. Possibly not the most useful part, but good to know. This is what I wanted to see, that it is possible. Yeah, fine. And navigation host, in this case, is inside of the scaffold, and we have different destinations. So as you see, they created, they are hiding strings inside of something else, but it's still a string. You see, cupcake screen, start, name. Cupcake screen, flavor, name. Let's go there. Cupcake screen, where is this? Here it is. Start, name, flavor, name. So this, what it is, objects inside of enum. So they use string constants. They reuse string constants as destination. Why? Just to show it's possible. There is no good reason why. It is definitely useful to define constants for the navigation, because when we type things, we may mistype. And if we mistype address, definitely it will not find it. So defining constant makes sense. Wrapping this inside of enumeration, possibly. Why not? So they did it. As you see, the addresses do not contain data because this example doesn't have a navigation from list to details, because it is from one screen to another screen to one more. And eventually, when we reach the last screen, it will try to open another app, like email app, let's email order or something like that. So let's see it. Let's run it. This one, you see, intent, share order. It is creating intent. We already discussed intents, right? What is intent? It's information to the system what you want to have. Your intent, what you want from it. And intent can carry key value pairs, call it extra. See, put extra, this is key, this is value. Key, value. Right? Type of the intent plain, so it will open some messenger. So by default, it's probably email or something like that. Subject and text. So with two parameters. So it will be some kind of messenger list, select messenger, which one you have to open, if you have more than one installed. And context start activity, intent create choosers. Chooser, it will create choices of messengers available. Because this intent is not exact. So it is implicit intent. So they create start activity and create chooser for the given intent. So it will give you choices to send a message with different tabs. So let's see how it works. Select how many cupcakes, okay, 6. Velvet type, next. When to pick, it is generated, right? So, okay, here it is. Next. So it is order summary, and this will open the chooser. How to send it. Definitely, you cannot send it with Chrome. So it is kind of simple choice to open program that can handle plain text, essentially. With two parameters, supposedly understood by the program as a subject and extra text. So they just show simple example to open another app. In this case, text messenger, if it is, or email, that you have a subject for the email and text inside of email. So it's an example of implicit intent that does not tell explicitly what to do, but give information to the system, please handle it. Questions? So let's see what is interesting here. Besides this one, this is definitely just interesting demo, right? Using intent to open another app. What is fancy about it? Buttons done on click, not fancy, right? We know about it. Radio buttons, we also know how to deal with it. We had two examples with radio buttons, also not fancy. Next, this is back in the toolbar, and we saw it before, right? Today we saw it, back button and toolbar. Again, radio buttons, so logic is repeated. Next, just a list, and this is you already saw. What happens here? This is call it on click of this button, share order. So action send, I missed this one. Action send, it is code for the system what you want to do. Okay. So implicit intent has action, which is code, parameters, and there is also additional parameters URI. So in this case, it's not used. If we want to explicitly open browser, it will be used URI, or open file. Okay. Now we have time left, about how many? 20 minutes? 25 minutes, right? 25 minutes. Oh, please work on your assignment. If you have questions, please ask. So use this opportunity to browse through your code, figure it out. If something goes wrong, please ask questions. I'm finishing this because I know you need maybe some questions, whatever. Okay. Also, it was already a lot of information for one lesson. There is a limited amount that people can handle within 2 hours, so it's probably a good time to wrap it. I don't want to return to this example. Please look through. It is just this. It's nothing fancy. It's not reusable in terms of, it's not real-life situation. And they don't return to it again, so it's probably just fun thing to look at. Okay. So I will stop recording.